I'm diagnosed with PTSD, like a lot of police officers end up being. But both the police establishment and individual police officers don't take this seriously enough, and certainly don't understand it enough. I certainly didn't. The stigma involved with PTSD within the police is dreadful. Very recently I publicly mentioned that I got PTSD on the social media platform Twitter, and the response from some police commentators was, PTSD is the new bad back, mocking the idea that police officers should be off sick for it. So we've got a long way to go, really, because mental illnesses are made worse by stigma. Stigma makes it so much harder. Now, PTSD is said to be on the rise within the police, or perhaps it's being, or the debate sometimes suggests that it's just being recognised more often. I think it's on the rise because of certain policy decisions. I think it's on the rise because of the increased violence of the war on drugs. But I suppose that's a separate issue. Specifically in the police, there are certain roles which are more stressful for mental health. One of those is the work that I used to do. I used to work undercover catching drug dealers. Now, I've got to know quite a lot of undercover cops since I went public. Quite a lot of them have contacted me, and certainly over half of them have mental health problems. Now, over several months of therapy, I've learned a great deal about myself and the nature of this condition. And one thing I've learned is that if you become very skilled at suppressing your emotions, which of course is quite a useful skill if you're working undercover, if you develop those skills over a number of years, then that really is a recipe for disaster for post-traumatic stress disorder. My illness is caused not only by the danger that I was in, and for that I mean not just the life-threatening situations I was in. Actually, the things that affected me more was the time in between. Prolonged periods of time where I expected something to happen. So I was in very prolonged periods of time where I was in an adrenaline fight or flight state, but having to maintain the appearance of being completely calm. So when you get good at that, it's a dangerous thing to be good at. But apart from the risk to myself, the thing that's caused me the most mental anguish is the harm that I cause to others. So I have symptoms of something called moral injury, which was first mentioned in diagnosis from soldiers returning from Vietnam. Soldiers who found it very difficult to cope with the things that they'd done themselves, rather than the things that had been done to themselves. And the same thing is from my point of view. Because I believed in what I was doing. I suppose in almost jingoistic terms. But that's a problem when you realise the harm of what I was doing. That creates an incredible sense of guilt. It's irrational, because I believed in what I was doing that was right at the time. But mental illness doesn't have to be rational, and that's the very nature of it. It's irrational. So I think the point of me wanting to make this video for my point of view is slightly outside my normal topic that I speak about, but I wanted to make the point that police everywhere are not supported enough, and it's not understood the stresses that they're under. PTSD is a serious thing, and it's going to get worse because the drug war is going to make the streets more violent. Look at the situation in the United States. More police officers now commit suicide than are killed on duty. So they're not supported and it's not understood. But I want to make comments specifically about undercover work because the police establishments do not want to talk about it because it's very inconvenient to admit that it's causing the harm that it is. It's causing huge harm to individuals. And it's a tactic which has no basis in evidence. Has there ever been a cost-benefit analysis on whether the work that I did or similar people made society safer? I can tell you it didn't. I can tell you it made it worse. I used to think I was really tough. In fact, you could even accuse me of being smug, except that I wouldn't be cocky. I wouldn't. I don't think people would really know that I was quite pleased with myself, but I was, because time and time again, I was in a really dangerous situation, my life threatened, and I dealt with it calmly, and people were astonished with how easily I brushed it off. I enjoyed that image. I was aware in the police then that some people had mental health difficulties. Now, I was never judgmental. I had every sympathy. But I never thought that I would ever have those same difficulties. Did I think I was better than them, maybe? Possibly. Was that arrogant of me? Quite probably. But years and years of going through that kind of risk has really taken its toll on me. Organised crime have become more violent in response to the kind of tactics that I used, and this kind of work is still going on. So the harm that's being caused to the police officers doing this kind of work is not understood, they're not adequately supported, and it's only causing harm anyway. If you consider the undercover inquiry that's going on, the political spy cops, that's only caused harm. But even though I'm keen to highlight the harm that's going on and being caused to police officers and the lack of understanding around mental health issues, and certainly the lack of support, I want to point out that, to my mind, the harm that's being caused by undercover policing is even worse. Think of the mental health issues of the women who've been conned, manipulated, violated as a result of the Spy Cops inquiry. Think of the problematic drug users that I've manipulated and people like me, the harm that I've caused to people. I've left a wake of mental health damage, and it's harmed me too. We need to be thinking in policy terms around mental health. I've come out here to do this video, by the way, because I find myself staring at my four walls and I just couldn't bring myself to talk about mental health. But out here, this is one of the places I come to ground myself. I usually run this way, and well, it helped me talk about it. So I think that was a bit clumsy, but thanks for listening anyway.